Good afternoon and welcome to Pittsburgh Land Bank Board of Directors meeting for Friday, February 14th, 2020. The first order of business is to call the roll.
Dr. Bay.
Present.
Senator Monte Walker.
Here.
Senator Fontana.
Here.
Reverend Burgess.
Here.
Councilman Lavelle. Teresa Cale Smith.
Here.
Steve Mazza. And Wanda Wilson.
Present.
Okay. Two missing. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Our first order of business is public comment. Members of the public who want to address this council will be given 3 minutes. First speaker, please. First speaker, please. Seeing no other speakers, we will move into then the formal agenda. You have the January minutes have already been emailed to you. I need a motion to accept the January minutes and approve them.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposers, nay. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings to my report, which is nothing. That moves us to the interim director's update. Mr. Lager.
Okay. Thank you very much, and happy Valentine's Day to everybody. This is one of the candy holidays. There are 3 of them. It's this one, it's Easter, and it's Halloween. So enjoy yourself. You can eat all the candy you want today. One of the things we need to do, I think, is we need to have individual conversations about the future direction of this organization. Is it to be a standalone on one extreme, or is it to be integrated into the city on the other extreme, which we've gotten to call the virtual land bank, but it's really just an integration with the city and those functions. And so we will have that conversation, I guess, over the course of the next month to figure out where we're going, because it's important that we figure that out so that we can go ahead and talk to people about funding and other things, because we have to have a format and a staffing for that. So we will be doing that. We need a couple of immediate actions, and one of them is related to the property reserve, which some of us say was canceled and some of us say was not. There's a controversy about that because the cancellation occurred as a result of an amendment to the CoOp Agreement with the URA. It is doubtful whether or not an ordinance of council can be canceled by a contract. Council never canceled the land reserve, the property reserve, so it may still be in effect. So I'm going to ask for a legal opinion from the city as to what the status of that is. Is it really still in existence as it had been? Because that influences how we go to council to ask for a new change in the land reserve. We either would be asking for complete reauthorization if it is canceled, or if it's not canceled, then we would only be asking to be named as an agent of the city to handle the land reserve, as the recommendations were pretty much, so that we would be the ones to do all the work for the property reserve. So I'll ask for a legal opinion on that. We don't have a solicitor as such, so that's why I'd have to get that opinion entirely from the city.
Seems that one of us should ask for a member of council. We should ask for the legal opinion because we're their client.
Yes.
And so one of us will ask for the legal opinion. Probably, though, I'm not a lawyer, but if we established it, unless we don't establish it, it probably still exists.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but 40 years of municipal law and work tell me that you can't repeal an ordinance by contract, and if you can, there's a lot of work we can do. Repealing ordinances secretly, that's not the way it's usually done, so we'll
Yeah, and
I heard the tortured explanation of why it's okay. It didn't convince me.
I was only going to add that the agreement that we signed, what is referred to as the Pittsburgh Land Bank Cooperation Agreement between the URA and the city and this organization, the PLB, says that that memorandum of understanding is no longer in force and effect for the city. So it really speaks to just simply the administrative procedures, and I think you are making a good distinction as to the code that probably should still exist, but the actual procedures and that integration opportunity that I think you're speaking of is very much applicable there. Does that make sense?
Okay, there is also a co-op agreement among the three taxing bodies for three taxing bodies' activity and property, which we will have to get ourselves named in as an agent. So we need to work with the administration on talking to the school district. I will try and talk with the county. I think it's Byron Exites who handles all their property stuff. So I will contact him and we'll see where we have to go with that. That will eventually come to council. Yes?
Is that the piece where we're paying taxes while the process is going on?
No, that's a different matter, and that is one of the reasons why we probably don't want to own property for a long time.
Or they should waive during the process?
One or the other. What we have to do is, when we take ownership of property, we have to pay taxes on it until we can get the Board of Assessment to declare it tax-free. That could be a year.
It is a year.
So what happens to you is you have to pay the taxes in the meantime
The first year.
on that property, which we don't want to do. That's
How do you waive that?
Everybody
Who
does
can
that.
authorize waiving that?
nobody. The court. You
So-
have to go to court, and they don't waive it. They just say you have to pay that year until you're declared tax exempt.
The standard procedure that has happened everywhere, not just here, not just around land banking, is that you're stuck under the assessment law for that first year as a new owner. I have filed for an assessment appeal on 243 Meadow so that in future years there'll be no tax bill. But for this year, it always has been and it always will be until you decide to make maybe
I mean, there should
a
be a
legislative
carve-out.
change.
There should be a carve-out for nonprofit or
That would have to
municipal
come
or
from the
something.
state, I assume.
I think that would be legislation, state legislation.
So what happens when the city does it?
The city just doesn't do it. The city is exempt. So it's a government entity. We're a government-created entity, but we're not exempt in the same way that the city is my understanding. So we need to go and appeal on a property, and that is not retroactive.
Got it.
Could we really look at, if we're determining, the question we had before of determining future direction, and if we were, really working on clearing the properties without, could it be that the city still owned it, but we were doing all the work of it?
Yes.
So I think that would be the better direction to go than spending a ton of legal time on this assessment issue. Because we'd rather get the whole idea of the land bank is to get the properties into productive use, not spend a lot of time figuring out different public agencies owning them, right?
Right. And the Board of Assessment has pretty much taken the position that in order to appeal, you have to have an appraisal. So we would have to pay for an appraisal to go talk to the Board of Assessment. It's the best route to take is to get ourselves declared tax exempt in the same way that the city is. And that might take state legislation, but we'd have to figure that out.
It is in the state land bank law that land banks are exempt from state and local taxes, but then the practicality of that as it applies to realty transfer taxes and everything else, the tax exemption, it's,
If we could work with the
If we
Board of
could do that.
Exemption to get something established that says anything that we own is exempt, that's probably the way to go. And that's not a public hearing, that's a discussion, and followed by a hearing of some kind.
I'll just make sort of how we're moving conversation since it's come up. From the very beginning, there were these two lanes of the land bank. From the very beginning, there were these two lanes. From the very beginning. One was the land bank should be an organizing, guiding entity that would determine the outcome of land that was owned by the city, the URA, and the Housing Authority, that it would be this sort of organizing area. It would not necessarily own the land, but it would take responsibility for its final outcome, right? There was another group of people, mostly outside of government. So inside government, that was kind of the prevailing view. Outside government, there were a group of people who pushed very hard for the land bank to be a separate, standalone organization, right? And there was, at the very beginning, a tension between the two groups. I, of course, was on the first side, which thought it should not be its own thing. And then we had lots of discussion, and at the end of the day, the other side won. So I think we're going to maybe do both, and I think we're going to now move aggressively to be the first thing, because we can do that without a lot of expense. So we're going to now become responsible for land on the front end of wherever it's housed. At the same time, I think we are going to explore what changes in government, what changes in the land bank, what changes in the city are necessary, or whether a whole lot of money, whatever is necessary for us to become the second thing and fully functional. We have to do both. I think we can crawl and walk at the same time, right, or crawl and run at this time at the same time. I think the whole idea of an independent land bank, we'll still work on that and figure out what needs to happen and work on that as the ultimate outcome. In the interim, while we're doing that longer term work, we are going to begin to take control of properties for activities, for home ownership, and will lead the clearing, the cleaning, and the conveyance of title from the city to the rightful or the new owner. We can do that at a fraction of the cost of doing the other, of taking it through us and then to the owner, and actually faster. We can actually do it faster in some ways by just going directly to the owner. So that's going to be, I think, the direction that we're moving to in the interim, and I'm just saying it publicly because I think that's pretty much what we're going to start doing. And so we're going to do both at the same time. Does that make some sense? Because the idea is to get land in the hands of people who want to live there and rehab it and own it. And so we're going to do that. All right. So the next thing I think is the RFP.
Right. So that leads us very efficiently into the RFP for title searches. We have to develop an RFP and put it out for title search companies and for quiet title. That's under development over at the URA. Nathan Clark is working on it, and so I need permission to develop that and put out an RFP for those services. Can I have a motion for that, or do you want to discuss it first?
How will that be per property? How will the RFP be structured?
It would be per property. However, we would do it in bulk, so it should be cheaper and faster. Is that your opinion?
Yeah, I have been working on that and would like to stay close to it because in the title industry world, as you probably know, volume gets attention. We don't have the properties and the value that get attention, but volume for a lot of dirty, very low value, dirty title, very low value properties can get the attention of. I would recommend and would like to stay close to the process of going through, even if it's a request for information, to find that right title company to work with so that we can actually have the attention that we need. The real estate market is very hot. It is very hard to get a title company's attention on these one-off, small value, very laborious work related properties. So I would recommend thinking in terms of volume, and I think that's where the city wants to go and being able to transfer.
Could we not have the entire portfolio? I mean, it would be costly, but the URA's entire portfolio have them start doing this, because the URA needs that, whether or not it's going to transfer properties to the land bank or not. I mean, it's a bigger upfront cost.
I'm not sure what you're
So,
saying.
so all of the properties that we're contemplating, most of them will come from the city or the URA. And the URA has the same issue that everybody has. We have a lot of properties with tangled title. And so if an RFP is issued, it should really be an RFP with tri-party agreement between city, land bank, and URA, so we can demonstrate that volume and that demand that might make it interesting to the market.
That might make sense. At this time, the URA, having done a request for qualifications, has a list of title companies that they rotate through. And I think it's not an effective process.
Can we
from
see
my
the RFP
first.
before it's issued?
Yes.
It was in your, the draft of it, which is under the name of
It's not in that package.
informal solicitations. It was in last month's packet, so it can be sent around
Can
again.
we have it sent around just separately?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So,
And it is a professional services agreement, so you don't have to pick the lowest bidder. You can pick whatever one you think is workable, and you can pick more than one if you wanted to have several companies that do this.
you're going to need,
But I need a motion that says we can put
Who's
it out.
picking? Who will pick after the RFP?
The board will eventually have to certify the results.
But I mean, who's going
The
to,
draft says that it would be a committee of URA folks, PLB folks.
review the?
Yes. Yeah.
Because a lot of them may come in around the same, so it might be some knowledge about who.
it won't,
Right.
it won't be me, but I'll take volunteers from people who want to serve on such a committee.
In our area.
Even if it's remotely, I know that's your expertise. It's not my
Yes.
expertise, so
That'd
I
be
would
really
really,
helpful.
I don't know how many members, but I'm going to kind of keep you in mind and put you on that committee along with someone else if we need other members of the committee, someone who has expertise. It's really not my level of expertise. But this entity, most of our delay in moving land is this. And so if we have an engine that is doing it in targeted places, especially in targeted places, right? Like if we took a 4 square block area or an 8 square block area, it doesn't matter, just take whatever place you want. And you took all of those, every vacant, abandoned property in that place through this process. An engine, could do that very efficiently and much quicker than anybody else could, the city. We can't do it. We do it very slowly, actually. The city itself does it slowly. The URA does it slowly too, because when we've done development projects, it's when they've had to be done fast, we've always went outside of the URA or outside the city and hired firms to go do it, because it's a very specialized, laborious, you need certain resources to do it. And scale makes some sense. So I think what Ms. Walker said, I think is right, exactly right. We need to think about how to partner with the URA and the city so that we can get the biggest bang for the dollar, and that have a company. And then we need to, after we get the company, I'm going to suggest to you that we need some sort of. We already have a plan. I think we already have properties already that we're considering, and that would be our list. I don't know how many. I can't remember how many there are. But there's a list of properties that we already have
30.
that have vetted, and that would be our first 30. We try to clear all those titles of those first 30 and then move from there. That's kind of my thinking, is use the list we already have, clear all those titles, and then keep going. And
That's the last item on here, but we can go to that now.
Oh, sorry. I
The
didn't-
30 on there are properties that have already been reviewed and selected as potential properties. They would come back to the board for final approval, but they were picked last year. They are properties that we should probably clear up front and then start working on the ones in the property reserve that are already under contract with CDCs, so that they can get cleared ahead of time too and be ready to transfer. What you want to do is get all these properties in a batch.
Yep.
So that when somebody says, I'm ready,
Yep.
you go, here you go.
Yep.
It's done, it's clear, it's ready, and that's where we put our resources.
Eventually, the process will allow you to ready properties even before there's interest, so.
Yes, eventually. Senator.
Process of clearing the title, we're looking for someone that will do that for us. So there's a couple ways to do it. And eminent domain is one way to do it, which is expediting if you do it that way. I mean, there's some properties that falls into, it's not going to get us all, make us all get in trouble with our constituents, because that's like a dirty word out there. But there are places where that can be used, and it expedites things. And actually, the neighborhoods and the CDCs and that would probably be okay with it. That
Do
has
we
to.
have eminent domain power?
City does.
No,
The city does.
the
So
land bank
city
does
would have
not.
to
The
exercise.
URA does.
URA.
But it
URA
hasn't
does.
used it for.
And the county does.
For 30 years.
Because they're vacant property over there.
Yes,
They use, that's how they expedite over there.
We do not, there's been a political,
I get it. Trust me, I get it.
there's been a sort of political wheel,
Since
a
the
political.
Supreme Court decision of Keto. That
Yeah,
was
It's
like
been
90s.
so we've not used it.
I understand why it's not used in cases, but they use it over there all the time, and it doesn't seem to, the county.
Yes.
And their vacant property, that's how they expedite, and then they move them. They're single property, side yards, those kinds of things, but they move them, and no one objects to
How
it.
long does it take them to do it? If they do it in the domain, they do it.
It still takes them a while.
Yes, I think it's less than a year, but
Yeah, it's still faster. Still faster. So, let's get a firm, and hopefully the firm that we pick will give us the options of what we can do. Because we'll have a kind of a vacuum cleaner that can kind of sweep up these properties and clean them for us. I think that's kind of the sense of it, so that we would have, how many properties are in the property reserve? What's that number?
About 250.
Huh?
I don't think that's a lot.
It's not a lot.
It's not a lot, but my point is, we already have where we're going with this. It's not like we know that roughly 300 properties we're going after first, right? Those are pretty much the 300 properties the land bank is going to do first. We already know there's going to be the first 30, and then the 250 in the land, in the property reserve. That will be over this year or so. That will be, and it sounds like a lot, but it's really not, because you can clear like 40 or 50 of them at a time. In batches. I don't know the number, but you can do them in batches. I know that. And so anyway, I'll entertain a motion to approve the creation and the release, although he will give it to us before it's released as to review, but I will ask for a motion to create and then to release the.
I'd rather just be a motion to create,
You would, and then,
release after we review it.
but then there'll be another month before we can
I don't
release.
care.
That's fine. I don't,
I want to see it before they release it.
do you want to,
See the list of properties.
my question is, let me finish. When were you going to try to have this advertised before the next board meeting? Was that your intention?
If we can do it, that would be the fastest way to get this done. One way to do this would be to create it and release it subject to the committee's review and approval, so that whatever committee is working on this, even if it's one person, two people, could review it and then say yes, and then we could release it.
Or would
Rather
you be
than the
comfortable
board.
being on the committee?
I
To
want to see the
review.
RFP before it's
Yeah,
released.
no, I got
That's all
that, I
wanna
got
see.
that, I got
That's
that,
it.
I got that. So that, is anyone else interested in the RFP other than Councilwoman Smith? If not, then I would entertain, Councilwoman Smith, you are designated to be able to approve the RFP and it's released. And so I'll entertain a motion for the
Senator
creation.
Fontana's going to help.
I'll entertain a motion. I'll create the committee with you, and we'll talk about who the other person is.
Okay.
It'll be at least two of you.
It should be three.
I can do three if you want. I'll entertain a motion that for the creation and the distribution after approval of a committee for an RFP for a title search and quiet title company. Need a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. So the committee, it is, I'm not sure who's interested. I think the easiest way to do it is just to do the three council people because we're here, right? And we can do that. Teresa will head it, and Councilman Lavelle and I will serve on the committee with her, and she will look at it, we'll talk about it, we'll approve it, and send it back to you. I think that's the fastest way. That way we won't have to, because we're here. That's just, we're just in the building, so it just makes it faster.
I know we're both responsible for the Southwest.
I always call, Senator Fontano is with us always, right? Even when he's in there. Next thing is selecting a solicitor.
We know we don't have a solicitor, we don't have an official solicitor or a lawyer for this committee, for this board, and we need to have one, so we need to select a solicitor. We can do it two ways. We can either do it with an RFP, which is cumbersome, or we could just come up with a list and talk to you about it and have all of our attorneys weigh in on who they pick. And it's your will as to which way you want to go.
Isn't there also, there's also a possibility of we could partner with the URA legal counsel, right?
We could, but we can't use Nathan because they are conflicted. So we can't use any of the URA's lawyers, is what I am told.
All right, so,
Could you use URA outside counsel?
Yes,
on our
if you had outside
we
counsel,
have
we could.
an approved slate of outside counsel representation that we might be able to.
so what I would prefer you to do is to give me a recommendation. If you could do that, if you could recommend by next board meeting that recommendation that move forward, that way we won't have to be cumbered with this. Just give us a recommendation of you're the person that's gonna be dealing with them, just give us a list of 1, 2, in your preference. Does that make sense?
And then the board would certify whoever that
The
is.
certified
Certainly would
readers.
want somebody that has some background in real estate, I would think,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
Is that what the outside counsel, Tamonte, today? Yes. Okay.
So, if you would do that, that would be right. All right, that takes us to the financial report. Councilman Lavelle is the treasurer, but we do still have the bills. First of all, Mr. Langer, walk us through the financial.
I'll do that. I admire Mr. Lavelle for taking this burden on.
You admire him?
Yes, I do, because believe me, it's a burden. We need approval to pay bills. There are bills amounting to $57,005.89 to the URA. That's 3 months' worth of bills, which they have submitted that they did not submit previously. I think it's November, December, and January. One of the bills is very large. It's $23,000 and some change, and that is because they used a personnel service to supply an individual as the clerical support for the board during that time, so that you pay not only that person's wages, but you pay on top of it for the organization that supplied the individual. I've stopped that, and we're going to work toward hiring just a single person because it's about half price. But that made it very expensive to pay one of those bills. So I need a motion to pay the bills of $57,005.89. $57,005.89 to the URA.
Have discussion about that?
Yes, you
Yes.
can have discussion about it.
So, first of all, let's lay the motion on the table. Is there such a motion?
So move.
Need a second.
Second.
Conversation, Ms. Wilson.
I think that there was a certain period of time where we just weren't really getting services from the URA, so paying just a blanket bill without any kind of adjustments, I have a problem with that. I think that's not right for the land bank's limited funds to be paying the URA when we didn't really receive, there wasn't full staffing. Then they hired a temp. Oh, yeah, no, okay. Then we did see some, and then was there, are we paying for office space that, like, what's the breakdown of the costs? And could the URA give the land bank kind of a reasonable break here for the fact that we really didn't, we didn't receive much, I would say, in the fall.
What I just passed down to you is all the backup on those bills, which I asked for and got. There's a lot there. It is not all real clear when you look at it. But they are bills incurred under the present co-op agreement. We should probably revisit that agreement.
I
And
almost
also
think it's
the
reasonable
issue-
even to negotiate these invoices, because
Well,
that's
we can do
that's
that
a lot
too.
of money that we don't really have,
It is. It's a lot of money and we don't have it.
so.
I think we're on the same page for the first time.
So what is the will of the board as far as addressing these bills?
Motion to table it till we could,
You could table, hold it.
We could just not vote on it and then direct Mr. Lager to negotiate on our behalf a reduced amount. Yes?
Thank you.
details.
Yeah, details.
I
Well, they
just got those
provided
bills.
details, but it's sort of like then you have to push back on, well, you know, now you have the details that you can then say, well,
Has the land bank issued in writing complaints to the URA about the performance and the services received?
No.
Yes.
So what I would say is that if there is evidence of lack of performance, that be part of the request for modification of the bills.
Yes, I did send a letter to the URA complaining about the lack of services to the land bank during that period of time when we were not receiving services. It was sent to, yes, it was sent to the URA. We'll leave it at that. And so there is a,
It was sent to the director at the time, I believe.
Huh?
I believe it was sent to the director, not,
Let's not get into details of it. A letter does exist, right? Yes, we do have a letter verifying that, and it will be part of the record.
Can I
will-
get that? I
Yes,
haven't seen it.
yes, I will forward it.
Help.
It's my letter.
Thank you.
I will forward it to you. You did not see it.
Thank you.
and that is reasonable for them to have a paper trail.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I will, yes, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for pointing that out really quickly.
All right, so you're empowered to do that. We'll get you that. That takes us to the 2020 budget.
All right, we have a budget in front of us, a proposed budget. I give you the same cautions that I gave last year. You can't spend more than you have. You have $163,000 presently in the bank. That's the amount of money we have. We do have requests in to government entities to provide some money through the year and private foundations to fund through the year. As those come online, which they have not yet, we will add them to the budget and hope that we can clear out a deficit of $588,000, which is a considerable deficit considering it's only for about half the year. If you did a full budget for a year and hired staff and did all the things you're supposed to do over the course of 12 months rather than 7, you would have probably $1 million deficit with the amount of money that we have. So that's a real problem. This is what we did last year. We had the caution that said essentially you can't spend more than you have. So it's really dependent on what money we get. And we aren't getting any right now. But in the future, we do expect to get some.
And we have to establish the budget in order to make the request.
The budget is necessary to make the request.
So that's just why, I just want to answer that question as to why we're doing the budget, because we have to have the budget approved in order to make the request. I'll entertain a motion to accept and approve the 2020 Land Bank budget.
So moved.
Need a second? Second. Any conversation? More conversation? No other conversation? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposers, nay. That takes us to inventory report. Ms. Clark.
Oh, very short. Just to mention with regard to 243 Meadow, what is in the PLB inventory, the one property, quiet title action needs to happen on that. And last I updated was the challenge of proceeding with that without a departure from past practices. And it really goes to, again, Mr. Legger's description of the opportunity for integration with the city. I had suggested that the land bank have the city join the quiet title action, which is otherwise ready to be filed, so that the city, which has always acted as the agent for the school district and the county, could simply proceed with us in that same fashion, and the PLB would take the lead on bringing the quiet title action forward under the rules of civil procedure, not the treasurer's sale necessarily. So all of that is still in play, and I do have an update that indeed the solicitor is considering that and thinking about that, which is very good, and our good staff in the mayor's office, our liaison, is leading that and keeping that conversation going. So that's it, unless there's any questions.
Look on the sections. That takes us to the Communication Committee. Dr. Bay?
We have no new reports.
Thank you very much. Takes us to legislative and regulatory updates. Senator Fontana.
Thank you. I guess just the governor did his budget address a couple of weeks back. I guess the good news is that all the funding for any housing-related programs or assistance was the same as last year, and a lot of times that's actually positive, because a lot of times they cut them and we got to fight to get them back in there. So they're already in there, so you hope to get a little bit more during the negotiation. So that's happening. There are a couple bills that passed through. Senate Bill 30 passed the House, or the Senate unanimously. It's over in the House, but it's a tax code bill that's amended for a new $10 million tax credit program for stuff administered by PHFA, certainly to encourage private sector investment in the new construction, acquisition, rehabilitation of rental housing that's affordable to low-income individuals. That's going on. Senate Bill 309, in the spirit of bipartisanship, Senator Fontana and Senator Mensch, who's a Republican, teamed up for a bill that passed the House, Senate, and it's on the way to the House. It establishes a Pennsylvania first-time buyer program savings account, where the bill provides that an individual can open a first-time home buyer savings account with a financial institution authorized to do business in the Commonwealth, sort of like the 529 for education. So that's going on. And last but not least, I just want to point out, maybe it's a negative, is that the president has proposed to eliminate a crucial housing program that HUD administered, which is, for folks to be able to, the HOME program, it's HOME program. It's an elimination of a program that's believed to prevent the development of preservation of approximately 40,000 affordable housing units, and would eliminate rental assistance for nearly 15,000 low-income renters in households. And that program was designed for low and moderate income, and he's been proposing to eliminate that. So you want to contact your congressmen and senators to ask for it to stay in there. Probably a good idea, not to be political here, but I guess I was.
I think that's right. Any other conversation? Thank you again. It's always good to have you with us. You are our treasurer. Is there any new business?
Just before new business, can I add on to that
Sure.
section, just in terms of what I had mentioned around the Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania, which has been our statewide partner on land banking. I had mentioned that I would be their contact person in the interim as they are developing, and I have news that they are moving forward with a land bank network in Pennsylvania to be able to really coordinate and advocate for state legislative initiatives that would assist with recycling properties. So they have the funding in place, they are moving forward, and I'll continue to be the point person just on that as they develop this network, if that's okay.
Very much, please. And then that takes us to New business. Is there any new business coming before us? Seeing no business, new business. Again, happy Valentine's Day, and thank you very much for your service. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Need a second. All those in favor? Second.
Aye.
Those opposed? We are adjourned.